Hi, Gritty Kitties. Welcome to another episode of Catty Chats, where we talk to people who are making things suck less in new and different ways. Today, we're talking to Cori Herbig from Project Ninja and a lot of other organizations in northern New Jersey. She's been on the ground for many days at Delaney Hall in Newark and has also been fighting consistently over the last weeks and months to fight the would-be detention center in Roxbury, New Jersey, in the county in which she lives. Welcome, Cori. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It has been a crazy, I was going to say week. It's been a crazy decade. It's been a crazy
Yeah.
decade. First of all, shout out to the home state of New Jersey. I grew up in Bergen County, next door to where you are in Morris County, and that's where my whole family still lives. And so, all things Jersey, especially northern Jersey, still really get my attention. I know that you work with the Morris Ice Rapid Response, as well as the group with Roxbury, who's been fighting the Roxbury Detention Center and more. And I'd come across your feed and some of the testimony you've been giving. So glad to have you here. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I know we're all juggling a lot right
So many
now.
things.
So many things. First of all, just so everybody knows, verified cat lady.
100%.
Not surprising. Not surprising. Three cats.
Yes.
That's like extra credit for more than two. So verified cat lady. So by which doesn't surprise us at all. We know our people are very claws out. Even the introverts are claws out, but like they type a hell of an email and they can organize the shit out of an event. So I am extra glad to be talking to you. For a cat lady from New Jersey, it's just we were meant to be. You have been working a lot protesting ICE in a few different ways and all things related to that. Can you tell me how you got involved, what came first, and sort of the history?
Yeah. If I can try to remember it. So, sorry, the last year is like a giant blur. So bear with
It's
me while I piece it back together.
you are
Um,
you are fine, and also yes.
yeah. So I have a very good friend who was working a few months back for an immigrant rights organization in New Jersey. And, you know, we started to hear that. I think you guys probably remember there was like a Washington Post article that broke. I know Hagerstown folks saw this too, that
Yes.
like listed out all the sites for the warehouses, the proposed
Yep.
warehouses. So we saw that. And like Roxbury is a couple towns away from me. And so
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like this is not happening here. Like this is not, no, we're not doing this. And so I reached out to him and we just started doing,
To
because
who?
I just do, my friend who worked for an immigrant rights
Oh,
organization.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And we just started doing some like very gritty, scrappy research about what warehouses existed in Roxbury and like doing like tax record search to figure out who owns them, like who, a lot of us in this space were doing this work and just like trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together so we could fight this
There's a
stuff.
lot of like Murder She Wrote ICE division stuff going on, whether it's Hagerstown Rapid Response or the folks out in Utah or, all
Yeah,
over the place. And it's really impressive. And it's a lot of people who are like, oh, I was a real estate agent and I know about, this land
totally. Totally.
zoning, or whatever.
Yes.
And it turns out to be really helpful stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I did housing law for like a hot minute out of law school. And so I was like, wait, I actually know something
I
about
was
these.
a lawyer for a hot minute too, then wasn't ever again.
Right.
Anyway, so you were doing all this, the Murder She Wrote ICE edition. You and this person, and you started gathering others?
Yeah. And then, well, so he reached out to some contacts he had at a New Jersey nonprofit. And turned out he couldn't make the first call that we had. So I found myself on the phone alone with them. And like somehow, I mean, as it happens, right? I just got sucked into it. And then more and more people started to sort of come in and talk about like, okay, how do we actually stop this? What do we need from the town of Roxbury? What can they legally do? What should we be asking them to do? What do we need from the state? What can they legally do? What should we be asking them for? And so it sort of snowballed. And like, Sussex Visibility Brigade had a protest back in like December or January. It was cold. It was really cold.
Yeah. It was a very cold winter when we were all it was really bitter cold January, February.
The number of times I have said, if I'm going to keep fighting fascism, it needs to get warmer, beyond me, right?
Right.
But so we had that first protest, and I think there were maybe like between 50 and 100 people there, which was a big turnout
No,
for a town the size of
that you will
Roxbury.
notice that.
And then Yeah. And like what we saw was like all these people driving by giving us confused looks. Like, what are they out there? What do their signs say? Because nobody knew what was happening, right? So that was sort of like breaking the door open on awareness. And as more and more people started to realize what was happening, we started to drive people to the town council meetings in Roxbury. So I activated the FTP coffee clutch and I said, who's coming to Roxbury with me? Right. And like all these people started to flood into the Roxbury town council meetings. We were, testifying before them for like hours, and they hate us. They absolutely hate us. But like, this is real and they don't want it.
Yep, because I know, for example, so I work a lot with Hagerstown Rapid Response, and that sort of got me in deeper and deeper into this. But it's about an hour and a half from Baltimore, but it's also an hour and a half from DC. It's its own little island in Maryland in a way, and it's not deep ruby red, but compared to a lot of Maryland, it's purple leaning red, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
uh, Board of County Commissioners is 1,000% red, and I'm wondering what the makeup is
Yeah.
in Roxbury.
100% red. The entire town council and the mayor, all red. So that was challenging.
Not It's in the New York greater region, but it's not like right next door, right across the river, right? I grew up in Bergen County,
No,
and it's
no.
west of that and north, and so
Yeah. It's about 45 minutes
yeah.
west of the city, and it is red. It is a red county. Like all of our county level electeds are Republican. There are no blue electeds countywide. Um, so it's a challenge, right? And we really, really had to hold their feet to the fire and call them out and push them. They still haven't done the things we wanted them to do. They, made some BS resolution about how they were against the warehouse, but didn't take any actual action.
What have you asked them? Name a couple of the things that you're still trying to get them to do.
Well, so there's still a bunch of ordinances that they could pass that we think would be effective in helping to keep this thing from getting up and running. So the warehouse has been sold to DHS.
Right.
That's done. But there is a consent agreement at the court right now. So they saw what happened in Maryland. DHS saw what happened in Maryland and they were like, whoa, okay, we know we're going to lose in this hearing. The fact that like Morris Ice Rapid Response and Project Ninja, which is No Ice Northern New Jersey, which is the like main group fighting this warehouse in Roxbury, and like Project Saltbox and people from Utah, people from all over the country are talking to each other and learning lessons about how to fight this stuff is amazing. Like it has become this like nationwide network of activism to fight back against this regime, which I just find so incredible.
That's how I found you. Somebody I knew
Yeah.
and somebody I knew, and then I know them, and then they gave me your name. And I saw your video online. And so when we're talking about I'd love to hear one or two of the things that you're trying to get them to do that might be a little different, because every geo has its own quirks, and it sort of depends on how far along the project is and whether they own the building and other zoning and lots of other things. But so I'd love to know what you're trying to get them to do, but I also would love to know any sort of creative, slightly different uh, things, actions that you all have taken. And they don't have to be, a clown parade, a little, although that sounds like a good idea. A literal clown parade sounds like a thing. If we could have poodles riding tricycles, but just anything that you've done that's been effective, that maybe it took you a couple of actions to get to that idea.
Yeah, so I think right now there's a focus on like what can the town enforce? Like there are fencing permits, right? And they want to put up temporary fencing. So how do we get the town to deny those permits? So things like that. I think there's a lot of creativity that can be had in those systems, those permitting systems within each town, and every town is a little different, like you said.
When I
So
took that New Jersey bar at the day after the New York bar, what was the big what was the
same.
big thing they studied on in the prep class? Now mine was like 30 years ago, but in the prep class, what was that? It was zoning, my friends. So, yes,
Zoning.
nobody has stricter
Absolutely.
zoning than the
Yeah.
state of New Jersey. That was a big add-on in the bar exam.
Yeah, so like lot of exploration in that space, trying to figure out what the town does and doesn't have authority to do. And then honestly, like just accountability, like showing up at those town council meetings every week to be like, why aren't you doing this thing? What are you doing about this? Why aren't you being transparent about any communications you've had with the attorney general's office or with DHS or with whoever, right? So there's a lot of holding feet to the fire, because frankly, with a fully Republican town council, they're not going to do that if we don't force them to. We've had some really, really amazing activists testifying in super effective ways. Like there's one woman who got up repeatedly for a number of weeks and read quotes from concentration camps, like Nazi Germany concentration camps,
Wow.
and would throw in a quote from detainees at Delaney Hall and say, which one? Which one?
That's amazing, and it makes so much sense, and I had never thought of that exact thing, never. That's amazing.
It was so moving. Like people were crying in the council meetings. Like, so there are some really effective tactics and, things being done to keep the town council accountable. We've been urging them, and this sort of segues into the other part of what I'm working on right now, but it sort of segues into the conversation around Delaney Hall. We've been trying to get the Roxbury Town Council members to go visit Delaney Hall to see what is happening there. None of them have gone. I think there were one or two who expressed interest in going and then haven't followed through on doing that. Not that they would be allowed inside anyway, but we want them to go and meet the families of the people being
Yes.
held in Delaney Hall and talk to them about that experience and see what it's like there, to be able to say to them, like, this is not what you want in your town. Right. And when I got up last week in the Roxbury Town Council meeting and testified, it was after I had been pepper sprayed at Delaney Hall when Senator Kim was there. And we were all really sort of reeling from that experience. Um, and I tried really hard to draw that through line for them. Like, this is what is coming to your town if you don't stand up and stop it, right? Like, we will be out here protesting in Roxbury, and your police chief is going to have to deal with it when ICE pepper sprays us. Like, this is what ICE brings to town.
In addition to disease, in addition to, overburdening the 911 system, in addition to overburdening the sewers and the any kind of emergency need, because they don't with their billion-dollar contract, they don't keep medical care on staff. They're always gonna be in the ER or, calling ambulances. They're not going to be you're not getting tax revenue from that property anymore. Everything else along those lines. If we're just looking at it in a nuts and bolts sort of way, even if you are dead set on not paying attention to the humanity part, there's a lot of it's gonna impact you and your family, you know, county board.
Like, as much as I hate to say it, like, people like you and I care about the humanitarian side of this, right? Like, I don't think anybody should be kept in the kinds of conditions that people are being kept in these camps. It is absolutely heartbreaking and makes me like literally sick to my stomach. There are some people who are not going to be moved by that. They just don't care. And we can't make them care. You can't make somebody care about other people. It's not how it works. So for those people, guess what? The Musconetcong Sewer Authority is going to be completely
Right.
overburdened and there's not going to be anywhere for the sewage to go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, a lot of different approaches, a lot of different tactics, just so that you can try to sweep everybody in. Property values are going to decline, right? The reputation of the town is going to go down. That got a lot of people out to the bigger protests that started to grow in Roxbury. So, there's in like the left world, and I'm sure you're no stranger to this, there is this like sense of purity test that people try to carry through it. And I get that. Like, we want people to care about people. But sometimes you also have to talk about
Right.
sewage, right? Like,
Sometimes
it's just
it's shit running through the streets that's going to get their attention for some people.
exactly like it's a yes and
Right.
situation. It's
It's
a
not
yes
an either
and we need
or,
to do
it's
all
a
of
yes
it.
and. Because if
Right.
we care about the humanity, then we are going to use all the tools we can to get people to care about the thing that
Yes.
gets the humanity taken care of, even if it's not them caring about the humanity as directly as we would expect or like.
Exactly.
Um, and so I wanted
Exactly.
to shift gears a little bit and, because it sounds like Roxbury, like a lot of places, feels like it's in a little bit of this holding pattern, but it feels like they're trying to
Mhm.
gather their strength, their resources, it feels like they're in a staging moment,
Yeah.
even though they're not
Yeah.
supposed to be doing certain things. They clearly are, case in point in Hagerstown today. So I
Yeah.
wanted to just confirm that that is, first of all, where you guys find yourself right now on the Roxbury front.
Yeah, we actually are pretty sure that they're literally using the Roxbury warehouse right now as an ice staging facility. So there are a ton of ice cars going in and out of there on any given day. We have folks tracking that so that we know which cars are ice
Right.
cars, right? Where there's a lot of license plate tracking happening.
I'm not
Um,
that girly, but
but
I
we're
know the
pretty
people who
sure.
are. I can't be that girl, but
Same,
yeah,
same. I'm not that person, but there are people doing it. I'm
yeah.
super grateful for them. But we're pretty sure that's kind of like where they're launching out of when they're hitting the surrounding towns and detaining people and taking them to Delaney Hall. Right. So it's like all
Oh, of
interconnected.
course, yes. That's and they've been
Yeah.
pretty blunt about it. They're taking it once
Yeah.
they had that loss in federal court here in Baltimore, and I was there in the courtroom that day. They've kind of put it on the down low, but as we can see, they're looking for every way to get around even an injunction from a federal judge.
Right.
So,
Right.
what was the thing, or when did you start going to Delaney Hall and trying to help those people there? Who have you met there? And what can you tell
Oh
us
my God.
before we get to what has happened just in the last few days?
Yeah. So first of all, I've met so many incredible people. I mean, the network of people is just beyond anything I can describe. So I went to another ICE protest in a small town in New Jersey called
Mhm.
Roseland, where they're trying to open one of their field
Mhm.
offices, right? And the town of Roseland is starting to come out and protest against that and push back against it. So I was out in, the freezing cold pouring rain with my 15-year-old kid by my side protesting the Roseland ICE field office. And I met this woman whose husband had been detained and was being held at Delaney Hall. That woman turned out to be Gabby Soto,
Oh,
who her husband Martine was the one who sort of
no, yes.
sparked. She and her husband were the ones who sparked everything
She's
happening
been
at
a
Delaney Hall, right? So
force.
she's incredible. She's incredible. But so I was talking to her at the Roseland protest, and I was like, let me scan your GoFundMe. I bet you the FTP Coffee Clutch can raise some money to help. Like, let's just connect, right? So we exchanged phone numbers, and I got her GoFundMe, and FTP raised some money for her. And, she and I started to talk about the other things she needed. Like, she needed help with
Sure.
babysitting because her husband was detained and she needed to go work. And so FTP jumped in to try to
That's
fundraise for some
amazing.
babysitting for her. Like, it's all about community
Usually,
care,
yeah.
right? And then, she called me and said, can you come on
Could you
Friday?
put
We're
a
going to do a
time
rally.
frame on this for me? When did you first meet her?
Sure. Yeah, that was, gosh, it's June. That was probably like maybe April, middle to end of April. It was only a few months ago. It
I'm
wasn't
like
that
10
long
years.
ago.
That's 10 years in
Um,
ice.
and I honestly, time is like
There are people
molasses.
I've
I
known
can't keep
since
track of it
February,
anymore.
March, and I feel like I've known them for 5 years, and I have not.
100%. Yeah, same, same. But so Gabby called me and said, we're going to have this rally at Delaney Hall on Friday. Can you come? We're going to like uplift the voices of the families of people inside. And, you know, so I went to that rally on Friday morning, and this was Friday, I guess like 2 weeks ago.
So, it would have been around,
And
May 15th-ish.
somewhere around there.
The past Friday was May 29. I'm just trying to this is for my own head, I'm gonna keep it this. So this past
Yeah, yeah.
Friday was the
Here, I
29th
could
of
tell you the
May.
date.
Yeah. Okay, so around the 15th-ish.
It was maybe it was either the 15th or the 22nd.
Sure. Mhm. That's about
Yeah.
the week Memorial Day
So I,
weekend
I
was
went
the
to this
22nd,
rally.
and that's when it started really not that it wasn't I mean, these folks have been out there for a year, but around Memorial Day weekend, it really started to
Yeah.
seem to, from my outside view, to heat up again, so that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually raised a really important point there, Blair, that I just want to point to. There are protesters and organizers who have been on the ground at Delaney Hall for like a year, right? And in January, there was like an initial uprising at Delaney Hall, and there were a lot of protests that happened. If you remember, it was when like Mayor Baraka was detained and LaMonica McIver was arrested. She's the congresswoman for Newark. Like, yeah, so like this has been going on for a long time. It has escalated, and now that you said that, it was the Friday right before Memorial Day, right? So I went for the rally, and then I got a call saying, "Can you?" So what happened at the rally was one of the longtime protesters there said, "You know what? The detainees have just announced a hunger strike. It happened like in real time while we were there, a hunger and labor strike inside." And she said, while they are striking, we're going to stand in solidarity with them outside. Through this weekend, we're going to hold a 24-hour-a-day vigil. And so I left and I came back, right? Because 24 hours a day, they needed people there through the night. So I was there with a couple friends, like into the late hours. And it just escalated from there. They tried to take Martin Soto out, and protesters blocked the van. And that sort of busted it wide open. So it became this like sort of chaotic, escalated situation. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And I've been there a number of days over the last 2 weeks. And so, what I want to make sure I say here is that I think it's really important that everybody on the ground at Delaney Hall follow the lead of the folks inside Delaney Hall. They are this like incredibly brave, shining example of peaceful, disciplined resistance. They are doing a hunger strike. They are doing a labor strike. They are protecting each other inside. They are organizing with each other inside, which I can't even imagine how challenging that must be, right? But they are doing it peacefully. And they have a very clear list of demands. They want to meet with Governor Sherrill. They want the most vulnerable people, so the elderly and the sick and pregnant women and young kids still in high school, released. They want them out. They want everybody out, right? They want freedom for everybody. They want an end to coercive tactics to get people, like they tried to trick Martin Soto into signing deportation papers.
I originally had heard and from a couple of sources that they had gotten him to sign that.
Yes, they did.
That is not a enforceable. You couldn't even enforce a sales contract under that kind of duress. I just
Right.
the lack of due process seems like there are a lot of humanitarian rights being violated that any court from the outside looking in would absolutely agree were obscene.
Absolutely. And due process is on the list of demands that they've put out, right? They have like they can't even get.
A court hearing.
Yeah, yes. Yes. They have like there was a day last week where there were 74 cases on the docket for one immigration judge. So they're each getting like 3 minutes. That's crazy. That's not due process. Like that's not even an opportunity to plead your case. So and like these are people who are not criminals and not been convicted of anything. Like half of them were swept up during their immigration process, right? So really, really disturbing stuff. And we're trying really hard. Like I've been talking a lot with organizers on the ground who have been there for a long time to make sure that we are uplifting those voices in an appropriate way and trying to ground everybody's actions in that so that we're all sort of pushing for the same things. And, look, the New Jersey State Police came in and escalated the crap out
Well,
of
I'm gonna
the
ask you about that
situation.
in a second too. So, if you don't
Yeah.
but finish your
Yeah.
thought about uplifting the people that you were talking about.
Yeah. I think that's actually the most critical thing, right? So I would love to see, and I know longtime organizers on the ground would love to see the people in the streets standing in solidarity with the people inside in a way that reflects what the people inside are doing, not in a way that brings violence and fires in the streets. And look, I know I understand that the protesters out in the streets are not the ones bringing the violence. ICE is the one bringing the violence. The state police are the ones bringing the violence. I understand that. And it's really hard not to react violently in response to that. But the people inside Delaney Hall are not reacting with violence. They are being brutalized and they are maintaining the discipline and the network and the organization to continue to resist peacefully and in like a very disciplined, structured way. So like, I personally think we all need to follow their lead. They're the ones being oppressed, right? So we should be following their lead.
Gabby Soto, what is the name of the main organization? Is it COCHA? Um, COSECHA,
Cosecha.
that she works with,
Mhm.
right? So, and we've tagged several times that organization and Food for New Jersey NJ and some others,
Yeah.
and the accounts that are funding the commissary because even though they have a
Yeah.
billion-dollar
Tax
contract, they
fees.
don't give out feminine hygiene napkins or toilet
Nope.
paper or anything else or bottles of water that's drinkable. And that's why they
Yeah.
work for $1 a day. To a phone call
It's
costs
wild.
$5 to your lawyer. You're paying $5 in America to talk to your lawyer, which is your right. So I just want to
Yeah.
work that in there. That
Yeah.
was just for me. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering now if you could tell me a bit more about this last 4 or 5 days. We're talking what the hell days? We're talking on
Yeah.
Tuesday. So over this
Yeah.
past weekend, so we're talking on June 2nd. So, the 29th, 30th, 31st. That's when we've seen an even bigger escalation. I personally and I realize that it may be different on the ground, so I'd like to know your opinion. And I agree with you on the people need to reflect the folks who have been out there for a year, the folks who are supporting the people who are inside. The people on the
Mhm.
inside know how bad things are. So I'm interested in hearing uh, about your experience the day that Andy Kim came and seemed to have this wave of realization come over him in real time. Let's start with that one.
Yeah. So, one, I want to give a super big shout out to Senator Kim. I think he's doing an extraordinary job in very challenging circumstances.
I was mad for an hour because I didn't want him
Yeah.
negotiating with
Yeah.
ICE because you cannot negotiate with narcissists,
We
but
all were.
right. I came back, I bounced back.
He figured it out quickly.
I'm just wondering what your experience because you were there that day in very close proximity because there weren't
Yeah, I was. So I also just want to give a super quick shout out to one other person who showed up there, which is Congressman Menendez. He came at like 6 o'clock at night and literally stood outside the gate, like inside the gates, outside the building for the entire night. They wouldn't let him in. He wouldn't leave. He stayed outside in the rain by himself inside those gates for an entire night to try to get eyes on Gabby's husband for her. So just wanted to mention that. Like that was huge.
for everyone who may be watching this and doesn't know, if you are a member of Congress, a senator, or a US representative, you have an absolute right to check in on detention centers. And there has been some legal clarification from courts around that they do not need to give you any fucking notice. Okay. But they made him wait for 18 hours
Yes, 100%.
because this corporation decided they didn't have to follow the law. Please continue. Sorry, I'm
Yes. So, all right. So let me shift to I am right there with you. So right there with you. But let me tell you about what happened with Senator Kim. So, I was there. I was actually live streaming for a lot of what happened while it was safe to do so. I was live streaming when we all got pepper sprayed. Um, so it had gotten to a point where protesters were blocking every vehicle that was trying to come out of that facility because they there were rumors that they were going to take a whole bunch of the hunger strikers out and transport them to like Louisiana and Texas to deport them, right? So like everybody was trying to block the vehicles and see inside to see if there were detainees inside. um and it really escalated things, and so Senator Kim came to try to de-escalate and try to get eyes on people, and had asked ICE excuse me, if he could see inside the vehicles before they came out. He had tried to bring an on the ground organizer in with him. They wouldn't let him because there's trust issues. Like the protesters want to know that somebody they trust was inside, somebody who knows what ICE has been up to. They wouldn't let him do that. He was waiting. My understanding is that he was waiting to like be able to inspect those vehicles when a freaking Bearcat, which is a giant armored vehicle, came out. And had essentially a pepper ball rifle. So it looks like an AR, it looks like an assault rifle, but it shoots pepper balls. Not, yeah. And they had that at one point. I was listening to Senator Kim literally try to de escalate the crowd while a pepper ball rifle was trained directly on him and those of us around him. Like they were literally pointing it at him. And it was just wild, right? And he's still trying to de escalate and trying to, like, bring the tensions down, understandably and, admirably. But then that Bearcat pulled out, sirens started blaring, and they what happened was they drove this like cavalcade of ICE vehicles out behind that Bearcat. So they were using it to block the entrance and block the protesters. But right before that happened, a whole bunch of ICE agents came out and tried to push the crowd of protesters back to let those vehicles come through. It got really violent. There were protesters thrown to the ground, people who literally were just standing there. Senator Kim tried to put himself physically between the protesters and ICE to try to like separate and de-escalate. And then, sorry, I don't know if y'all can hear that. That's my cat in the litter box behind me. I apologize for the background noise.
This is the perfect show for that. And showing their opinion of ICE. That's how I.
Exactly. Right on cue. Right on cue. At some point, they shot a pepper ball like almost directly at Senator Kim's feet. And you can watch it in the videos. You can see it happen. It just like explodes in this cloud of pepper dust around him. And I saw from where I was standing, I saw people starting to run towards me, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And I'm like, trying to get in there a little bit so I could like show people what was happening. People need to know what's going on. This all needs to be documented. And suddenly I was like, "Oh my God, I can't breathe." Right? Like the pepper spray had accumulated in the entire area. So literally everyone around me, including me, was like coughing and gasping for air. Like I was sneezing uncontrollably. My eyes were watering uncontrollably. Everything hurt. Like it was awful. And I wasn't even like in the direct line of fire. Right.
Right.
So while all of this is going on, Senator Kim is literally standing in front of a pack of ICE agents who have a protester on the ground, like reaching in, trying to get that protester out and trying to get the ICE agents off of that person. And meanwhile, he's covered in pepper spray. I know he was injured. His hand was injured at some point. He doesn't know how. It just was.
Right.
And it was just complete chaos. So it was this like inexplicable, unnecessary escalation by ICE when Pax Christi folks, which is one of the organizations on the ground, and Senator Kim were in the middle of trying to de escalate the crowd. And instead of giving them a chance to do that, they came out literally with guns ablazing and pepper sprayed the entire crowd and like dragged people to the ground.
No, these rhinestone cowboys wanted to come out and they wanted an excuse to like fire the stuff that they had. They have it and they wanna use it, and they thought that would be really cool, and if they could hit a senator, even better, extra points. Um,
Yeah,
and then what has
exactly.
happened in the last few days, so much to my dismay, the governor, McSherrill, has called in the New Jersey State Police. They came in full riot gear. She said they weren't. They came in mounted police. We have all seen video. If you're not just watching like broadcast TV news, you have seen mounted police and pushing people. You have seen people, it seems from everything I've seen, you've seen cops who've been pushing barricades, and Mickey Sherrill has said that it was the protesters who, now I'm not saying every protester who showed up was a perfect person, but on the whole, the people, to me, it seemed like, who started this violence were ICE to begin with, and then it was the New Jersey State Police. That is what it seems to me. I have
Yeah.
not been there on site. I could not get there. I had other obligations this weekend, but the I just want to hear from someone who was there, and you were there this past weekend. What was your
I was.
experience? And maybe it's different from what I saw.
No, so I want to be clear. I was there this weekend over a number of days. I was not there at night when the state troopers rolled in because I'm not a person that's going to put myself in that situation. I have 2 kids, 3 cats, a dog. Like I'm not doing that. But so, I've been talking to a lot of people who are on the ground who were there, and essentially what it sounds like happened was there were a couple of protesters, like maybe 3, right, who were kind of shaking the barricades where that the police were behind. And that started it just like lit the fuse. And instead of the police coming in and like addressing those 3 protesters, they came in full riot gear with shields and mounted police and announced everybody had 15 minutes to leave the area or they would be in violation of the riot laws in New Jersey. And
Sorry. Okay, sorry. You can take the girl out of New Jersey, but you cannot take New Jersey out of the girl.
oh my god, I've been resisting dropping F-bombs this whole time, so you're good.
Why? No, this is a full fuck podcast. This is a full fuck podcast.
Well, just never know. Um
Fuckorama. Go ahead.
But so the police roll in, they say you have 15 minutes to leave or, unlawful assembly, violation of the riot laws, whatever. And within less than 10 minutes, they started pushing the crowd back, right? And then within minutes of that, they were launching tear gas at the crowds.
A lot of tear gas and started their own fire because they launched so much. I don't
Yes.
know if these were just guys fresh out of the academy or something, but they were launching tear gas like blocks away.
Yes.
People who could have been retreating. They launched so much so often fires were started not by protesters,
Right.
by the New Jersey State Police.
Yes. So, like, what I saw was that they launched tear gas, right? If the crowd was here, they launched tear gas in front of them to push them back. And then they fired tear gas over their heads to kettle them in, right? So that they couldn't go back where police were.
Do you want them to leave or not? You want 'em to leave or not? It doesn't seem like you want 'em to leave. It seems like you wanna kettle them and beat the shit out of some of them, and then maybe arrest them because I was a First Amendment attorney for a hot minute 30 years ago, and I'm sorry, but when you are it's not just free speech, it's also the right to assemble, it's also the right to petition the government. So you are allowed to have some restrictions. Now we're in a situation where the police, I feel like, have been escalating this violence. I feel gaslit by Governor Sherrill. Now, I do not live there and I have not been to Delaney Hall, and I don't know what the people who have been on the ground for a year, I think, get to have sort of the final say on this. But to me, she is not living up to her promises and is treating us like
Yeah.
we are all either idiots or children or both. I don't know what it feels like to you, and more importantly, the people who've been on the ground for so many months.
Yeah. So, I will say that there is an overwhelming sense of like disappointment and anger in how Governor Sherrill has handled this situation. The representation that was made initially was that the state police were going to come in to try to help de escalate the
Right.
situation, which is the exact opposite of what they did. And, I had a conversation today with one of the original organizers on the ground, and we were sort of musing over the fact that Mikey Sherrill is former
Yep.
military, right? And like she approached this like from a military strategy, not as a governor.
We are not the enemy, we are the citizens.
Right, right. There is a deep, deep sense of disappointment and anger from almost everybody in my circles about how Governor Sherrill has handled this situation. And look, I say that as somebody who supported her through her campaigns.
I know a lot of creators who have supported her, and so I mean, I wasn't a New Jersey voter at that time, but I did my video bada
Yeah,
bing chitterelli,
yeah, yeah,
anti-chitterelli as much as anything, um, in the hopes that, maybe not perfect, but much, much better, and now I feel like, and the idea what really enraged me was when she said that somehow if everyone wasn't good boys and girls and weren't quiet, then ICE could have more of a justification to come in and surge. Babe, They're surging
Right.
right now.
Right.
They're working out of
Right.
Roxbury. They're everywhere all the
Right.
time. They're just not that you do not negotiate with narcissists.
Or
You cannot.
terrorists.
The only thing they well, a lot of times they're the same.
Mhm.
And you have to stand up to them, but also, I mean, what do you ask women what they were wearing?
Right.
Because
Right.
that's what it felt like to
Yeah,
me.
the way that I
Felt like if you're not quiet right, then you're gonna make Serge hit us
Right.
all. It feels like a battered family. It's horrific, and I don't use that phrase lightly
Yeah.
because I understand that everyone's traumatized. Hell, maybe she's traumatized, but she's also the governor, and so we need better judgment.
Yeah, the way that it rings to me, the way that I characterize what she has said is basically that she said, "We're gonna come in and protect you from the brutalization of ICE, and we're gonna do that by brutalizing you ourselves first, so that ICE can't do it." Right, and it's like, that's not helpful.
And when we get to the point where now they're making the First Amendment zone, and look, that is a thing. There is a thing where you have a First Amendment zone, but it's not a half mile away.
Mm-mm.
It's usually like, we're gonna keep these 2 groups, like, a few yards from
Right,
each other so they can't get into
right,
fistfights, but everyone's still right
right.
there. Maybe you're across the street, that's about as
Yeah,
far, but to send people a half mile away and then to go arrest how many people? 100 people over the weekend who were protesters?
63.
63 peaceful protesters who were many of them, from what I see reports, were outside that half mile, which is a huge
Yep,
distance for a First Amendment
yep.
zone, a half mile.
Yeah, and initially, the, like, First Amendment zone that they set up was this, like, pen, right? It was right in front, and I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm going in there, like, ICE is just gonna round us all up." Like, everybody was scared to go in there.
Like, it's like a fucking mousetrap, and they put cheese in there.
Foot in that trap. Like, that is not a good idea. And we had honestly, like, we had some of us have been having conversations with folks on the ground and who were on the ground in Minnesota and in Chicago and LA who've been dealing with this for longer than we have here in New Jersey. And they warned
Yeah,
us about
sure.
that. They were like, listen, like, they're gonna kettle you in there. Like, you need to not be in that, right? So, and I swear it was like everything they said was gonna happen happened like a freaking playbook. It was like literally play by play. They told us exactly.
Can you give us a couple of points?
Yeah.
You don't have to remember everything. I'm just curious for people who might you need to know this.
Yeah, I mean, the kettling for one, right? Like, they had said they're gonna call in the state police, and the state police are gonna kettle you and arrest, like, mass arrest, right? And they're gonna do it under the guise of de-escalating. Like, they literally called it before it happened, and they were like, "It's exactly what happened in Minnesota. It's exactly what's been happening at Broadview, Illinois," right? Like, they
All these blue states and blue
Yes.
cities.
Yes. And so it was like literally watching it play out exactly as they had laid it out. And I was like, oh my God, we're all the same. Like, they are all the same. It doesn't matter if you have an R or a D next to your name.
This is radicalizing. Say that in a general way. I don't mean that it's actually radical when you stand and
Yeah.
think about it. But what they would call radicalizing the left, this has been such a moment
Yes.
of suburban people with
Yeah.
office jobs having their first not the first
Right.
experience for Black people, not the first
Right.
experience for brown people, not the first experience for indigenous people, but let's
Yep.
face it, people like you and me. And you may have believed all
Sure.
those other people when they said they were being abused, but it's very different to experience it.
Absolutely.
And that's when we say to people like, "Hey, they're not just coming for immigrants. That should be fucking bad enough. They're coming for everyone they don't like and who doesn't behave. And these folks are just the
Yep.
test because they have the most legal wiggle room in
Yes.
some cases, not nearly what they take." And so when you, this has, I think by the
Mhm.
time we get to the midterm
Right.
elections, through this summer, between that and the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, this is this is a sea change. This is not the result that the authoritarians were hoping for. It's going to have the opposite result.
I hope.
I hope and believe. Today, I believe that.
I hope. I honestly, like, I'm gonna go down the, like, dystopian rabbit hole, right, that I think so many of us try to avoid, but, like, so, like, I my biggest fear, and I think the biggest fear for many of us, is that the election integrity of the midterms won't hold, right? That they will mess with it.
Well, I think ICE is part of that plan. ICE is
Yes,
part of
I do
that
too.
plan, and they've said as much. It's not me, it's I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
They said it.
That's not a conspiracy theory, they've talked about
They've
it.
talked
They
about
talk
it.
about it very blatantly. They're trying to take voter rolls. They're
Yeah,
trying to do all the stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I hope that you are right, and I do think we will see massive, massive turnout for this election. I just hope the integrity holds and that it's enough.
We're gonna have to it's gonna yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to be overwhelming, it's gonna have to be hungry. We
Yes,
gotta do hungry numbers,
exactly.
and it's harder because it's not a national vote here, it's gerrymandered state by gerrymandered state.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a couple, and I guess I've taken up much more of your time than I was expecting, although I should know better by now, based on myself, not on
It's
you.
fine.
So what, people have also been rather upset with Senator Cory Booker. Now, fun fact, Cory Booker went to my sister high school, about 3 miles from where I grew up. We played each other in sports. I didn't he was a year ahead of me. I didn't know him. Some of my friends did. Um, and, I've been very disappointed with him, at least since he voted for Jared Kushner's father to be
Yes.
ambassador to France, but, I mean, probably stuff before that too, that's just leaping out at me now. Um, what the fuck? I mean, I know he went there,
He
like,
said
by
he did.
himself and didn't talk to anyone. Well, he said he did, and I think someone interviewed him either on the way out or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
What the fuck's going on? What the fuck's going on there?
I don't know, but it's so
But you're on the ground there, so I'm just
no, it is, like, so, so deeply disappointing, like, he has been completely absent, but listen, from what the longtime organizers on the ground have told me, that is nothing new with Senator Booker.
yes, I've heard that too. I don't think I've ever been a New Jersey resident while he was senator, so I would only see it from the outside.
Yeah, yeah. Like, he shows out for, like, the photo ops and, like, the big shiny moments, but he doesn't actually show up and do the work. Like, he doesn't actually meet with detainees and hear their stories. He doesn't actually talk to the families. Like, he just comes, holds a press conference, takes a couple photos, and then leaves, which doesn't help anybody.
No. Um, Andy Kim's getting reelected. Um,
Sure as hell is.
yeah, that's the man who was picking up very poignantly
Trash.
picking up the I remember talking to my relatives, when that Senate race was it 2 years ago? And,
Mhm.
about 2 and a half, and, um, oh my god, Murphy's, wife was running in the primary.
Tammy Murphy, yeah.
Person I knew was, like, very works in political world, in advocacy world, and, "Oh, she's gonna win." I'm like, "I don't think she is. I don't think she is. You're
No.
not talking to the weirdos I talk to. I'm telling you, the weirdos not the weirdos, but, I like
No, I know.
they're sick of this shit, and Andy Kim has this amazing story, and I grew up in Bergen County, where I grew up in Bergen County in the '80s. My high school was 30%, first, second generation Korean,
Yeah,
other Asian, Southeast Asian too, but largely it was South Korean folks. Like, there's a huge, New Jersey has everything, but
yeah,
there's a huge Asian and South Asian community there, and so I was just like, it makes sense that,
yep,
they've been building this state up for years as, they're like, I'm Italian and Jewish, and the immigrant, the few decades later, that's when you've worked your way up, and the second, third
yes,
generation start getting elected to things, and makes perfect sense. And my relative was like, "No, no, no," and I'm like, and he won, and I was like, "Yep, I don't know what it is," and that's why I was angry, but not shocked about Booker at this
yeah,
stage of the game. But when it felt like Andy Kim was trying to negotiate, like, in a way that Cheryl seemed to be negotiating, except she wasn't negotiating with
yeah,
she was, abdicating in advance in my point of mind.
yes,
I was disappointed for an hour with him, and then I'm like, "Okay, uh, I take it back."
yeah. I think we all a lot of us had that evolution with him, like, he needed to see it.
Honestly.
Yes, Yes. Yes. And listen, Andy Kim is one of the most exceptionally decent human beings I've ever known. Like, he is just a good human, right? And he,
That's nice to hear about somebody. Hey, I have a
yes,
Senator
yes.
Van Hollen down here in Maryland I'd like to
Oh,
introduce you to.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
The state of play is now what? In your knowledge, talking to groups on the ground that you've been
Yeah.
again, folks who have been there for a year, folks like Gabby
Yeah.
Soto and other people and other organizations. What is their
Yeah.
state of play right now?
Well, so right now, the one piece we didn't talk about, which is just, I think, one of the most heartbreaking pieces of all of this, the organizations on the ground had set up a year ago this like white hospitality tent for
Yes.
families.
Yes.
And that tent has like clothes for people so that they can meet the dress code when they come to visit their families. They're not allowed to wear like spaghetti straps or leggings, so they give them
It's
clothes
like
to put on
going
over
into
their
the
clothes.
Vatican.
Right, right. Like toys for little kids to play with while they're waiting in line for hours. They feed them. They give them a shady place to stand in the heat inside the tent. Like, it's just straight up mutual aid, community support, right? Visitation days. Right. And so this weekend, FBI and I think DHS ransacked that tent. They went in and completely destroyed everything inside, and they soaked everything in pepper spray and tear gas. So there's nothing in there that is usable, which is just, there's no reason for it other than cruelty. And it makes me like simultaneously so filled with rage and so filled with sadness that I don't really know what to do with it. But so the very first thing is getting that tent back up and running, which some of us on the ground are working to do. Yes. So the tent itself is still there. It just needs to be cleaned out, decontaminated, and restocked. So there's a few of us working to make that happen with the folks on the ground. And we'll have more information about that soon. But that is with an eye towards getting family visitation restored in a meaningful way. Right now, it's very sporadic. It's very unclear. Families don't know when they can or can't visit, what the process is or is not. So hopefully by this weekend, that will be restored now that the street has been blocked off for a few days and it's like under control from a safety perspective. The question remains, once that street is reopened, what will happen? Will protesters go back in, and will they be able to keep it peaceful and actually, like, not necessarily non-disruptive, but
No,
peaceful,
no, yeah,
right?
here's the thing,
Non-violent,
being an asshole and
not violent.
saying jerking things is not being violent,
It's not. It's not.
you know?
But there is a de-escalation that needs to happen on that street. And like, some of that jerkiness is stoking violence and
But
escalation,
let's
right?
be
So it's
clear
a
about,
matter
like,
of
what
like,
that is and what like, somebody saying, "Hey, ICE guy, you're an asshole," from 10 feet away,
have at
doesn't
it.
mean you get to go beat the
No.
shit out of him. Right.
Right, right. Yeah, and
Any more than real
there's some
life.
parameters. Right, right. So, I think that's the number one goal right now, is to get family visitation restored in a meaningful way, and then to start to tick through those demands of the detainees inside and their families. Like, fight to get, as much as I hate to say it, get Governor Sherrill inside there. Let's get their due process rights back in check here. Let's make sure that they're releasing the most vulnerable people. Like, there's a whole slew of demands. You can see them on everybody's feeds right now. Anybody on the ground, from Kosecha to Pax Christi to Eyes on Ice to
Mhm.
DSA, which is the Democratic
Sure.
Socialists of America. Like, everybody on the ground is trying really hard to like uplift those demands and keep them as the grounding focus, so that whatever comes next is rooted in that.
Eh
That, I think, is the next challenge.
Right, including the people who maybe and I disagree with Governor Sherrill. I think it's fine for people from out of state to come. As in
Absolutely.
fact, how would we not maybe you and me, but how would the hundreds, thousands, millions of other people who saw this stuff for the first time over the last 3 or 4 days have seen it if I don't know, Status Quo or,
Right.
Here's Why Kevin or, all these other
Right.
people, if they weren't there well, Here's Why Kevin, I think, is from New Jersey, but, if these
Yeah.
people weren't coming in with these cameras and who had
Yes.
experience, who had resources to have the tech and the backup and the thing and the batteries, if they weren't there, then
We wouldn't
we
know.
wouldn't know and everyone would be in worse shape. This is not about
Yes,
where you're coming from, it's about how you're contributing to the end goal of lifting all
exactly.
this up and ending getting the most vulnerable out, getting people their due process rights, making sure they can have reasonable mutual aid, making sure they have humanitarian, normal things like clean water and food. I can't believe when they put out the fucking menus. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that proves
Uh,
everything, doesn't it?" And
right,
the
right. And then ultimately the release,
and
right?
ultimately
The
the
release
release.
of every
So, you're a government affairs person. Are you gonna write us a draft bill to ban private prisons in the United States? How about just New Jersey? Just New Jersey. Just start with New
So
Jersey.
there are, interestingly, there are some bills at the New Jersey State House. There are some awesome assembly members in New Jersey who have like one of the bills would tax revenue from private detention facilities at like 100% or something insane like that, right? Some creative things that could be done legislatively. I would love to see a state try to implement state level oversight or city level oversight, at least for like health
The
violations.
health
Like they're not even
department,
letting in the New Jersey State Health Department, you know?
Baraka in Newark is suing them, and I thought what he said made a lot of sense.
Yes,
This is not the federal government. This is a private company. These are private employees. There's not a
exactly.
federal employee here most of the time. These are a contractor,
Right.
just like every other contractor in the United States who Boeing is
Yes.
a contractor. I bet if there's a Boeing commissary, the health inspector goes
Right.
in there sometimes,
Right.
and so
Right.
he's I was like, that is interesting. I am here to hear this one thing may not work, but that's the kind of thinking we have to have because you
Yes.
often can get somewhere in the courts, not fucking everywhere with the Supreme Court, although sometimes you can.
In New Jersey, sometimes you can.
Every once in a while with the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Sometimes, kinda. My wish for Governor Cheryl is that if she doesn't go herself, that she has to sit there and talk to the family members, or for that matter, the senator from her own state, Andy Kim, and talk about the
Yeah.
maggots in the food and the disgusting water and the no toilet paper and working for $1 a day, which is literal slavery. So you can make money to pay to make a phone call to your lawyer, which is your legal right in America. So, tell me a little bit though. You haven't always been doing this. What were you doing before Donald Trump's second term? What were you doing in your life?
It's like hard to even remember the before times. That's a real question. So I have always been in like cause work professionally. I was in cause work at that time. You guys will love this. I worked for the ASPCA for like 13 years. So huge animal lover.
What are we even talking about? First of all, we have an idea for a nationwide campaign for people to donate food and vet services for pets who have been left behind very sadly by nobody's choice, either because their family was deported or detained by ICE, or because people have been put into atrocious financial circumstances and can't even afford healthcare. And so guess what, Cori? After this interview, we're gonna be talking about who to get in touch with
All
in
right.
that world.
All right. Yeah. And so after that, I worked at Everytown for Gun Safety for a while doing gun violence prevention. I do like state legislative campaigns. I do government affairs and state legislative work. Um, Now I'm in like big bad corporate America. So I'm scratching that itch in my personal life, which means I'm involved in way too many things while also working a totally unrelated full time job and raising two
I have
kids.
no idea what you're talking about. None of our listeners this is so I don't know how this happened to all of us, but here we are.
Here we are. Exactly. And
I was a touring comedian, not full time. That was my second job.
yeah, I mean, honestly, like people ask me who I am, why I do what I do. And I'm really like, my response is usually like, I'm just a mom. Like, I'm just a random mom from the suburbs who is like, I have a perhaps like inflated sense of empathy, which is where my handle came from on Instagram, right? And like,
Empathy is my super handle? Yeah.
yes, empathy is my superpower on Instagram. Like, I just feel things really deeply. And when I see people suffering, I'm like compelled to act. I can't not. And so I find myself acting and then like bringing others along with me inadvertently.
So you're a mom, you're working, you're busy, you work in corporate America. They expect you to show up. They expect very specific sorts of things. What do you think was the spark that lit the current level of your activism right now?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint an exact moment.
Sure.
What I can tell you is that around February-ish or March of last year, I hit a moment where I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And so I'm very staunchly anti-patriarchy, and I am old as well. So I put up a post on Facebook and I was like, okay, ladies, like I need to connect with more women. Like I'm really feeling like I need to connect with more women, like-minded women, and just talk about the dumpster fire that we're living in, and like maybe identify some like local actions we can all take to feel a little bit better about the world we're living in and feel like we're doing some good. And so I thought I was going to grab coffee with 5 people. And so many people responded to that post that I ended up having to rent a space. And thus was born the FTP Coffee Clatch. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I interest you in a position in the Cat Ladies for America hierarchy?
Perhaps.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. Go ahead.
Perhaps. But yeah, so like what I think has been like really eye-opening for me is that I have realized that there is this huge need from a lot of people to do something. And nobody knows what the hell to do, right? We're in this weird, crazy time where it's really hard to know what to do because the old rules don't apply. And oh, here's one of my cats. And I'm gonna
need to know that cat's name.
This is Luna.
All right, Luna. Anyway. Luna, you're very welcome here, but we are doing business.
We are. She'll chill. But so, I realized I do government affairs work, right? Like that's what I do. I do like lobbying, but good lobbying. And I started to like script some actions for people on Instagram because there were a lot of people in my world who were reaching out to me and saying, what do you think about this? Like, what should we be doing about this? And how do we make a difference? Because they know that's kind of the world I live in. And so I started just putting up videos of like, okay, here's the action that you're going to take today. Here's your script. Here's your phone number. Go ahead and make your call. Here's your email. Here's the comment period that's open with this agency for, trans rights or whatever the thing was. And those were so well received because I think there's such a hunger among so many people to find like meaningful actions that they can take. We're all so pressed for time and we're all so like disgusted with everything that's happening. And I think a lot of people are put into this like almost state of paralysis because they just don't know what to do. So I've tried to just funnel people into actions. And if you look at my old Instagram posts, I always end them with an action a day will keep the fascists away. Like that was the thing that and I initially was like, okay, I'm going to do one of these every day. Like I'm going to find the action every day. And like the world happens. So that didn't.
Right. We were all finding our footing, and that's amazing because you were just giving somebody, if you're overwhelmed and there's a million places to look, you need one thing to focus on to get you out of that state a lot of the time. And I think that was a great way to do it. And we've been doing something similar and evolving similarly. Tell me about the first group that you created. I think you said it was called FTP Coffee Clatch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one I was just talking about that sort of happened by accident with like people who I just needed like some females to talk about the patriarchy with and talk about like the dumpster fire. And it turned into this like amazing, fierce group of women who are like my soulmates now, right? And we are constantly in communication. It is a complete safe space for us to all talk about like everything from our families to our despair to an action that we saw that we think other people might take to like, we do a lot of community support. We do like when SNAP benefits were suspended, we launched into action like immediately and started a gift card, like a grocery store gift card drive for some of the food pantries in our area. And within like 24 hours, I think we raised enough money to buy gift cards for like almost 200 local families to bridge that gap until SNAP was reinstated. Right. And so it's really local but meaningful actions that make a difference for people who are struggling. And it's also like, hey, go out in the streets and protest at Delaney Hall, right? It's like there's a spectrum, and I feel like everybody has something that they can do. Not everybody's going to do everything, and that's okay. And like, not everybody's going to be on the front lines screaming at ICE, and that's okay. But like, maybe you could write a check to support the families at Delaney Hall if you're not willing to come out, right? Or maybe you could organize a gift card drive for your local food pantries when benefits are getting cut. Or like, I just feel like there's such an abundance of need right now that there is literally something for everybody to do.
It's finding that toehold,
Yes.
because before we were in such a dire situation, you know, sometimes you'd run into a group and there was gatekeeping, or we try to keep our group really flat because like they need tools and they need like a little bit of like a, and so did I, and so do I still, but needed a little bit like a little education, a little whatever. People aren't stupid, you know, like you don't have to give them like these super intense metrics and this incredibly stacked hierarchy. This has been great. I'm going to ask you a couple favors.
Sure.
One favor is I would love for you to keep us up to date on actions. We do have a New Jersey chapter in North Jersey.
We need to connect. Oh my gosh.
She's in Morris, the
Okay.
Lantern Brigade.
Lantern League. Yeah. Yeah.
Lantern League.
But I'm sure I know. So I know the woman who started the Lantern League. She started in FTP, in the FTP Coffee Clutch, and then spun off the Lantern League from that. So like, we're all interconnected. I bet you she already knows her, and we can connect the dots.
I'm gonna be a real problem for you, because I have some jobs. We're all making stone soup. I don't know if anyone knows that reference, but me,
Yes.
I'm very interested in what actions we can ask our, not just our social media followers, but our in real life chapter followers. And it might be very specifically right now for Delaney and New Jersey. But for example, we have, you know, our Minneapolis chapter, our Salt Lake City chapter, our Baltimore, and our two other chapters in Maryland. Really, all places that, you know, they want detention centers everywhere eventually. So anything replicable is also great, just as an idea, but also very specifically to help these folks get back on their feet with their mutual aid. And it's ongoing, and people shouldn't forget about Minneapolis, and you shouldn't forget about Chicago, and you shouldn't forget about LA. We sometimes have to focus a little more here or there, but it's all going to come back around for everyone eventually. Yes. So in our LA, we have Inland Empire and our LA chapters that work really a lot on ICE related things out there. So keep us up to date on actions that we can take, that we can put out to our subscribers. And also, I'm gonna get some other ideas from you. I'm gonna see what kind of, I love some legislative ideas.
Okay. And we can kick some things around.
We're gonna kick some things around. See, we have some tools. We have your Action Network. We have your other things. We got some stuff.
Yes.
We can use. So if there's any way that we can help with those tools that we have and pay for, I would love to use them to help y'all. This is nothing can end this. Which one is this?
This is Nova, and the one back here on the desk is Karma, and they'll probably start hissing at each other any second.
I think all three of mine were here, and then they got bored with me because Mommy's talking at the screen again. So expect an email in like 10 minutes with a list of demands.
Awesome.
And is there anything else that you want us to know, or the people that you work with on the ground who've been there for months and years want us to know?
It's sort of the same things I've been saying, and I know I sound like a broken record, but really to center the voices of the people inside Delaney Hall and their families. And that goes across the board, right? For every one of these concentration camps. Like, the people inside are the ones that are being oppressed at the level that none of us on the outside can really fathom. So I think it's really important that we follow their lead and uplift their voices. Not to say that like they're on their own, they should do what they want to do, but like, we need to gather around them in support, not preach at them.
We need to be part of the protection. We need to be part of they're going to tell us what they need.
Exactly.
And they've been doing this, and it probably took them a little bit to figure it out, but they had to learn quickly how to figure out this convoluted system and how to survive within it and minimize damage. And then also, when you're so desperate, you know, when it's time to really do really unthinkable things like starting a hunger strike, is the resistance of very abused and desperate people. And that's who you know,
to get
That's
to that point.
apartheid South Africa. That's where we are. But we're a big believer in
Yep.
joy, and we love cats are part of that for us, and I hope they're part of that for you. We're claws out. That's one of our mottos, our big motto, claws out. Like we're always ready.
Right.
So we like to end these with a little claws out meow. It's like claws out meow. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna. Are you
Got
up
you.
for it?
I'm up for it.
I'm gonna 3,
Ready.
2, 1, claws out. Okay. 3, 2, 1, claws out. Wow. Perfect. And you wore the New Jersey uniform of black,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Got the message.
Every day.